30-second lag. That needs to be muted, and then we need to remove that. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, test, test. Testing at 5:35. Test, test, test. Okay, so welcome everyone. Hopefully some of you will recognise the venue. Yeah, so today is counting the breaths. I don't think there's any announcements, so I'll get straight on to it. And let me just get my notes up, because there's things I promised to cover. Yeah, so I've mentioned a few times that I was aware that counting the breaths was quite an ancient practice. I didn't realise it went back to the 5th century, and it was taught by a great Buddhist meditation teacher in India, and written about in his book. And so it's been with us, for 1500 years. It's quite an established practice. And what it is focused attention. So it's about assisting us to become comfortable with focusing on the breath. My experience, as I've probably mentioned with beginners, is that it's of the breathing based techniques, it's the one that works the best to calm the mind when people first start to meditate. Now the thing about that is that it's one of the ways that we can fall into the trap, and it is a trap, of trying to calm the mind with meditation. Because then what you've done is you've set up an unwinnable competition. There will be times when your mind races and you won't be able to be calm. And it's actually got nothing to do with the purpose of meditation, which is to become familiar with the mind. However, when we first start up, and when we're trying to get to sleep, and when we're trying to rebuild our practice, it's a really good place to come as a basic meditation practice. Now there's a whole bundle of different ways of doing it. The way that it was originally taught, it wasn't taught the way that I teach it, where we count on the in-breath and the out-breath. The reason that I teach that is because it's noisier. So if you imagine, here's the inner voice. Yeah, you should be doing this, should be doing that. This is right, this is wrong, this is bad, this is unfair, this is cruel, this is good, da 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 da, and there it is, busy, busy, busy. And we want to take over. Now, and it doesn't work for everyone, because we can have multiple voices in our heads. In fact, if you imagine a scenario where you're talking to somebody and there's some other people chipping in, and you're thinking about it, well, there could be 5 or 6 voices in your head, so that's not hard, and they can run alongside each other quite easily. One of the things that a lot of people notice when they're doing counting the breaths, so they're counting the in-breath and the out-breath, and yeah. The inner voice is chattering away in the background, and that's what I call a constant train of thought. And fundamentally there's nothing wrong with that. I'm fairly confident that the subconscious runs, and I expect neuroscience at some point in the future to become sensitive enough to our language centers to become aware that there's various threads running at the same time. They probably don't make sense and they probably don't go anywhere, but then neither does most thought or much speech, come to think of it. So I'm not looking at it as a competition where we want to drown out the inner voice, yada yada yada, and we just want to shout louder, as it were. It's more about it takes us a step away from being drawn into the inner dialogue, and being drawn into the inner dialogue for many people that's the process that brings them away from the present moment. We want to keep coming back to the present moment. Mind wanders back to the present moment, mind wanders back to the present moment. There comes the point in most meditators' experience at some point or another, depending on how regular your practice is and how focused you are, that your mind becomes reasonably calm. And so you're sitting down to do something like counting the breaths, and actually there isn't really an inner dialogue, but you're counting the breaths. But it seems to add an extra element of focus on the breath. So there's a linguistic noting of the breath. So really in a way it's a noting or labeling exercise. Breath rises, say 1. Breath falls, say 2. Rising, falling. 5, 6, 7, falling. Rising, 9. And so the way that it operates is as a noting labeling exercise, as a kind of focus. And because I just call it a mantra because we're using the inner dialogue, I like to have a blanket approach to these, and it's like a mantra. However, because it's so supportive of the breath, really it's a breathing exercise, and there's this mantra of the counting going on. So it's great for beginners. A lot of people use it to get to sleep. I did. From time to time, depending on what the mind's up to, I still use it now. I tend to use the labeling the quality of thought meditation, where I'm labeling thought as repeating or fleeting, and that tends to bring me closer to the subconscious part of the mind. And going into the subconscious part of the mind is basically what happens when we sleep. So there we are. Our consciousness is with the subconscious part of the mind, and we see all of the creations of the subconscious in our dreams. And there's only another meditation that takes us a bit further than that, which is what I call the Karma Yoga meditation, where I think I've actually put this on a podcast, so it's on one of the recent podcasts, where we're actually waiting for the choice to arise about what we notice. And that appears to be deeper than actually waiting for thought. And so, counting the breaths, along with all of these other meditations, they're a way of exploring the nature of the mind. And the purpose of meditation is to become familiar with the mind. And so it is a tool that we use to do that, and we become more aware of the nature of the mind. So it's a very powerful practice. But what I'll do is I'll take you through all of the various variations of it today. If you're a labeler, because what we've got is two sorts of people in the world, effectively. There are counters and there are labelers. That's, for the vast majority of meditators, beginners and intermediate, you'll either prefer counting or you'll prefer labeling. It will work more usefully for calming your mind. I personally, I suppose, if I had my desert island meditations, would be labeling and noting. And I'm aware that some of you have noticed labeling and noting creeping into my teaching. Who knows, that might change. And I suppose if you're somebody that needs to count the breaths when you sit down to meditate, then it might be a tad frustrating if I'm teaching labeling and noting practices. However, what I will say is just, in a meditation session, you don't have to be doing the same meditation as everybody else. You don't have to be following along with mine. You can sit down in the group, or you can sit down in the virtual group, such as now, and you can allow yourself become aware of the meditations, the fact that everybody's meditating, and then you become more comfortable with the entire process if you're able to do the meditation that helps you to calm your mind. So what I'll do is begin the meditation in the traditional way with the Tibetan singing bowl in this case, as I believe all of you know the best ways to become comfortable. I mean, I've got many students who've been meditating longer than me, so you just do whatever you do. The advice I give is for the elbows to be at the side, head balanced comfortably on top of the spine, tongue up against the back of the top teeth, and allow yourself to become, I believe, the most comfortable entry point into meditation almost universally is either through noticing sounds, which is what we're doing when we're listening to the bell, and we're noticing those sounds moving through time, or alternatively, or possibly at the same time, noticing the tiny movement of the belly just at the point where the belly meets the chest. And then you can become aware of the present moment and aware of the movement of the present moment through time by noticing the rising and falling of the breath, or if you're in a sound-rich environment, noticing the movement of sound through time. When I begin a meditation, I check in more regularly because I have a desire to relax. So I'll bring my attention, for example, to the breath, to sound, notice the present moment, and then my cycle of awareness of the tension in my body is more regular, so that I can come back to it, notice the tension, back and sides of the neck, shoulders. If your face is tense, get into the habit of placing the tongue up against the sharp part of the teeth and relax on the out breath. If you've had a very tense day, you can actually just stroke your fingers down your face. As you breathe out, so you're breathing in, and as you breathe out, just assisting the physiological feedback from your face. So much tension, so much pressure and stress resides in in the muscles in the face. And you're just allowing the tension out. And noticing the movement of the present moment. Noticing the belly rising and falling. And sound moving through time around you. And then check in with the body, releasing tension on the out breath. And then back to the breath, back to sound passing through time. And we'll begin with a mantra meditation, which is the simplest mantra that there is, which is repeating in the mind as the belly rises and falls. Rising, falling, rising, falling. In time to your breath. You can either notice the breath in the nostrils or the movement of the belly, whichever you prefer. So we'll just practice this for a minute or two, just noting the rising and falling of the belly. Or the air in the nostrils. And now we'll move from the rising and falling to counting. The way I teach it now is in the same way as it's a kind of sing-song noting practice. It's also a sing-song counting practice. So you're breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're counting each in-breath and each out-breath up to 10. You get to 10, begin at 1 again. When you lose count, begin at 1 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10, get to 10, return to 1, lose count, return to 1. There's another lesson in this meditation, and that is the lesson of you learning how you respond when your mind wanders, or when you will either lose count, or you'll find yourself counting up to 23, or whatever it happens to be. And everybody does that. I've been doing this for years, central practice. And every so often there I am on 16 or 17. and the how you notice, you just notice how you respond to it. And so you don't say, so, oh, I'm going to respond with equanimity, I'm not going to be disappointed. Don't. Just notice what's happening. And then bring your attention back to the breath. And back to the counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10. On the in-breath and out-breath. 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, up to 10. Get to 10, back to 1. Lose count, back to 1. This is the way that I teach it, which is the rarest version. That's called counting the breath. And now move over to the more traditional method, which is counting on the out breath. So breathing in normally, breathing out, count 1 on the first out breath, 2 on the second out breath, 3 on the third out breath, up to 10. All sorts of pitfalls. Sometimes people find themselves breathing in time to the counting. If that happens to you, you can step out of it, just focus on the breath, or you can note the rising and falling of the breath, which seems to be less invasive, less chance of you breathing in time to your labeling than there is breathing in time to the counting. So you can move over to noting the breath, rising, falling. 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're counting the out breaths again. So this is counting on the out breath, breathing in normally, counting on the out breath. Same thing up to 10. Mind wanders. Start at 1. Get to 10. Start at 1. Lose count. Start at 1. You can start at 1 for any other reason. So if you have a constant stream of thought and you're unsatisfied with it, it's unsatisfactory stream of thought, there's nothing to do about it, yada yada yada. When you notice it getting gritty, start at 1 again. See what happens. It's just counting the out breaths. And now the final version, which is to count the in-breath. Breathing in, say 1, breathing out, breathing in, 2, breathing out normally, breathing in, 3, breathing out, again up to 10. Get to 10, begin at 1 again. When you get to the final breath, 10 is on the in-breath, and you breathe out before you return to 1. So that's counting on the in-breath up to 10, just counting the in-breaths, get to 10, begin at 1, lose count, begin at 1. Another traditional version of counting the breaths. And then just let your mind go free. Allow the mind to choose its focus, the breath, sound, anything that's happening in the present moment, thought. So we're just resting the mind, because this is a focused exercise. So that's how we exercise our awareness, our focus. And so just allowing the mind to rest, to go free. Or allowing whatever arises to arise. And then whenever you're ready, in your very, very own time, gently return your attention to your surroundings. So that the other two practices where we're focusing on the out breath and counting the out breaths, or focusing on the in breath, counting the in breaths, counting up to 10 in both cases. That's the original practice, the one that I teach. I think as time's gone on, people's minds have become busier, and so I think we need to adjust to that in our practice. But it's good to try these out, and you may find that there's one that you prefer, and you can mix and match your practice. You can move from one to the other. You can drop out, just notice the breath, sound. The practice tends to be used. I have a really busy mind and I want to meditate, or I just want to calm it, or I want to get to sleep. It's the go-to tool for a lot of students, and it's also very good to come back to. And so if you're rebuilding your practice, I think we're all rebuilding our practice as the lockdown comes closer to an end and the new normal returns, whatever that might happen to be. So that's it for today. Good to see you all. Some people I haven't seen for a while, such as Sue Jones. Hi, Sue. Nice. I'm glad you made this. I know that you're a counter, so this will be useful for you. And so there's another couple of sessions that you'll be able to attend. Well, I mean, if you're mindfulness-based resilience group, you can attend all of them. But the Saturday sessions open to the public. Sunday sessions, mindfulness-based resilience group. But I haven't actually promoted this yet, but I'm be doing a session at 3:30 on Monday for the carers, but I'm going to do it just via a YouTube link on my YouTube channel, so it's open to the public as well, so you can drop into that one, and I'll send that information out to you. And I know I've got a lot of students who are carers anyway, so you might want to come along and say hi to your mates on the YouTube channel. And you know, if you're not, feel free to come along. It's open to the public as well. And I'll be promoting Carers Week, next week's Carers Week, and it's all about making carers visible, because they're such focused individuals. They don't have much time to promote themselves and what they do. Okay, so brilliant. Yeah, I'm glad you like that, Kel. I staple diet of mine for decades, I think, and I still use it now. Okay, so thanks everyone. Good night. Yeah, it does look quite good in this photograph. You're right. Who knows? Maybe they'll have utilised their time. I'm pleased you enjoyed it, Maxine. Thanks, Matt. Good night, everybody. You're welcome, Anne. Good night. And I shall post this on the group. Broadcast doesn't seem to want to end.